Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Flower Boat Girl, a novel based on a true story. By Larry Feign, narrated by Emily Wu Zeller. Publisher's note: a supplementary PDF containing maps, character list, and glossary can be found at piratequeenbook.com/glossary. Part 1. 6th year of the reign of Emperor Ga Hing, 1801. 1. Magpies. I'll never believe in birds, especially magpies. Listen to them, squawking and clattering on the deck overhead, like armies battling on scratchy twig feet. The same thing every day before sunset. But today they were more grating than usual. I rose from the sleeping mat and pounded the ceiling. The customer in my bed snorted and rolled onto his side, offering a view of his scar-crossed coolie's back. I dared not hit the ceiling again, for fear of disturbing him in the anticipated tip. Let the birds wake him. How did magpies become harbingers of good fortune? Was it because of that story, the one my mother loved to cry over? Every year, at the height of summer, the magpies linked wings, forming a footbridge across heaven to unite a lonely weaving girl with her shepherd boy lover, just for one day. Why didn't she stay with him? I always asked. Why didn't she make the birds weave a bridge down to earth and let them both escape? Every year my mother smiled at such questions. Oh, young, my big-eyed girl, it's because a single day of pleasure so pure can last an entire year. Besides, we want to tell the story again next summer. It was that time of year right now, the 26th summer of my life. Where was my bridge away from this place? Where was my shepherd? The magpies cackled back. Ha! Not for boat girls. Not for whores. Certainly not for you, Set Young. Faraway drumbeats scattered my thoughts. They sounded like fishermen beating pigskins to herd fish into nets. But this was neither the right time of day for it, nor their usual slow, steady pulse. This tempo was hurried and uneven. A palpitating heart. I draped a shawl over my shoulders and stepped to the porthole, rested my chin on folded arms, and stared out at my world. 8 wooden huts hovered on stilts over the hard mud, same as they always had. The beached junk at the end hadn't been there when I was sold away as a child. Now it looked as parched and worm-ridden as this old boat, the one my young body paid for. Now my hollow haven. Beyond, the mudflats stretched out forever, empty except for an old woman on a skid gathering mud skippers, and the girl with her clam bucket who I'd found squatting in the cabin when I returned after 13 years away. A fluttering sea breeze chilled my sweat. The air tasted of iron and salt. A storm was coming. The fish would be swimming deep. Then why had the fishermen's drumming grown louder, more erratic? In a paddy field somewhere, buffaloes moaned, pigs whined, dogs barked back. The magpies chattered. I'd forgotten how noisy this place could be. I'd forgotten many things about Sun Wui. As a little girl, this narrow inlet had seemed like a wide-open gulf, big enough to swallow the world. I'd forgotten the stench of fish on everything, every plank, every stone, the salt-sour taste in the air from shrimp drying on racks. And the mud, always the mud, black and squishy at water's edge, but scouring young fingers when they dug down for clams. Spreading inland, the mud turned coarse, pockmarked with stones and crab holes, but never dry enough to earn the name dirt, never letting go of whatever it sucked in. Boulders, driftwood, my father's stranded fishing junk. Nobody knew where he was, where he'd gone, or whether he was still alive. Nothing was left of him, my mother, or the family we'd once been, in this rotting carcass of a vessel. Not a strand of rope, not even a familiar stain on the deck. This hollow hulk that he'd traded my young life for had been abandoned by its spirits. The clam girl splashed through a pool in the mud, swinging her bucket, stooping to examine something that caught her eye. I turned my head away, but too late. The memory flooded in. Years and years ago, another little girl had set down a clam bucket in nearly the same spot and picked up a dazzling red scallop. "I'll give this to my new baby brother or sister. Do any day now," I'd thought. I remembered shrieking with laughter when a hermit crab popped out a claw and tickled my hand before I set it down and it scurried away. I'd clung to this memory through the years on the flower boats, always recalling that last perfect moment of my life. Before. But I always stopped there, humming, shouting, anything to block out what came next, the blood across this very cabin's floor. No, I couldn't bear the thought. Not even now. Everything suddenly went quiet, like the world holding its breath. No drumming, no birds, no breeze. The air weighed on my head. The shawl whipped off my shoulders. A rough hand seized my breast. His breath filled my ear. "Again." My revulsion was tempered by the thought of his purse. Another copper cash toward the cost of a proper boat. Something, for once, that was mine. "Need to pay 2 times, I said. "First one too quick." "Not my fault, dear." Composing my best working smile, I half turned to him as something caught my eye. A ship crept past the headland, a stout 3-masted creature of nearly black wood, sails tinted red by the setting sun. I would have taken it for an eat-water coastal trader if it hadn't been for an unusually tall deckhouse at the rear. It swung into the inlet. I was stricken by its bulging, painted eyes. It didn't belong here. Local Guangzhou vessels rarely had eyes carved onto the bow, and Fukienese ones were round. But these were high and elongated, squinting like a tiger preparing to pounce. The coolie tugged my arm. "You hear me, you bitch? Said fine. Pay twice." 2 ships. Now 3, all with tiger eyes. Other than that, they really were nothing more than tattered old junks. Whatever they'd come for didn't concern me, unless they sought the kind of refreshment I offered for cash. Meanwhile, I had an impatient customer to appease. This time he took more pleasure in making me earn my money than in the act itself. Skillful handwork was required to prime him into shape. Then he climbed on from behind and grunted and growled like a bull, in rhythm with the fisherman's drumming, his cue swinging past his shoulder into my face with every thrust. I made the necessary noises while picturing a treat for afterward. Slices of fresh roast pork, or a bowl of sweet bean curd, or maybe his tip would cover both. A sharp knock at the cabin door so startled me that I nearly bucked him off. He squealed in pain. "Ayang!" It was the little clam girl. She pounded louder. What did she think she was doing? The stupid girl knew she was never, ever to disturb me when I was working. Hadn't I been kind to her, given her the forward hold, always sharing rice in exchange for a handful of clams? How dare she interrupt? The latch jumped from the slot and the door creaked open. I screamed, "Get out!" The coolie thrust himself off, smacked his head on a low beam, and danced into his trousers. "Not you!" I lunged for his leg, but he slipped away. "Wait! You pay money!" He nearly trampled the girl on his way out. "My money, you turtle egg! Pay me!" I almost crushed the girl myself as I stumbled through the doorway, pulling on my crumpled clothes. By the time my tunic was half-buttoned, he was already bounding behind the fishing huts toward the paddy fields. "See what you did!" I grabbed the clam girl's muddy shirt and dragged her out to the deck. Tears and sweat mixed on her face. I... The unmistakable crack of a musket shot singed the air. Magpies surged from the poop deck, forming a shrieking black cyclone overhead. With a high-pitched burst, they scattered toward the darkening hills. The girl grabbed my arm and pointed across the seaward rail. "I said pirates!" I counted 5 junks. Men clambered over the rails into sampans. Others jumped straight into the water. With the sun low behind them, they looked like cut-out figures in a shadow play. No one had ever told me what to do in the event of a raid. Were they here to plunder? To murder? What would they do to women and girls? "Run!" I yelled. Back in the cabin, I flung open my storage chest, pulled out my best silk tunic, and grabbed a padded vest. What else to keep out of their hands? I sifted through a small pile of trinkets, hairpins, copper bracelets, a dented mirror, the pathetic vestiges of my former life. Let the bandits have them. All except an ivory comb which I tucked snugly into my hair. I dragged the sleeping mat aside, reached under a loose floorboard, and removed my money purse with its reassuring metallic rattle. The girl screamed from the doorway. "Young! They're coming!" "Don't wait for me! Go! Run!" I stretched my hand deeper into the gap until I found the slippers. The embroidery caught on a splinter until I freed them with a gentle tug. Only a few threads damaged. I pressed the soft silk to my cheeks, as if they might hold some residual warmth from my mother's feet. I threw on the tunic and vest, stuffed everything else into pockets, ran onto the deck, and without stopping, made a flying leap onto the hard mud below. The first wave of pirates was just knee-deep in water. More surged from sampans and junks. Dodging mounds of fish bones and discarded nets behind the fishing huts, I met the clam girl crouched at the paddy's edge. Stupid girl! Why hadn't she run ahead? Clouds of mosquitoes chased us along the muddy causeway and through a taro field, before finally giving up on us as we ran through a fan palm grove. What lay up ahead was worse than stinging bugs. At the village gate, landsmen holding bamboo poles blocked fishing families from seeking shelter inside. One villager spotted us and waved a menacing pike. I tugged the girl's hand to move faster. "Young, I can't run that fast." "You have to if we're going to get around those ox-prick bundes." Fishermen from neighboring huts tried to wrestle past the barricade, but they were no match for swinging pikes. Among the mob of defenders, I recognized men who'd visited my bed, though that would earn me no advantage. Those peasants and petty traders who called themselves bunde, so-called natives of the land. To them, I, the girl, my neighbors, were all nothing but lowly tangas. Boat people, creatures of the water, little different than the pirates now swarming up the flats. "How many of those bastards cheated you for your clams?" I said. The girl struggled to run and speak at the same time. "I don't know. A lot." "Time to cheat them back." I pulled her off the footpath into a patch of tall weeds. Men shouted at us, but we had the advantage of a relatively clear field. To intercept us, they'd have to wade through a swamp of broadleaves that would leave them itching for the rest of the day. A gap between a house and a walled pigsty gave us a place to catch our breaths. It opened into an alley which hooked around a corner, leading us straight into a crowd searching up the market lane. Men carried elderly parents on their backs, older children dragged younger ones, while too many wives hobbled behind on tiny lotus feet. They might be daintier than us Danga women, who never adhered to that tradition, but at least we could run to save ourselves. That was, if we could reach the Gunyam temple that everyone else was rushing to before its gates slammed shut. I steered the two of us along the edge of the throng, past the bean-curd shop, past the ironsmith, wedging ourselves through the herbalist's family who were carrying armfuls of precious roots and fungus somewhere out of reach of the pirates. At last the temple structure appeared at the bend in the lane, surrounded by a sea of people. "Our only chance is to squeeze through," I said. A wild-eyed woman stepped between us and yanked the girl's head back by the hair, maybe searching for a missing child. Before I could reach her, I was struck in the face by a duck cage on a shoulder pole. The crazed woman vanished into the crowd. I spat out a feather, and we plunged onward. The temple's worship hall and lofts overflowed with squirming bodies, and the small courtyard teemed with people. Monks tried to lever the heavy timber gates closed as whole families pushed through, ignoring shouts of, "Women and children only!" That was us, a child and a 26-year-old woman. I picked up the girl and dashed for the narrowing entrance at the same time as 10 or 12 others. I had my fingers on the gate's edge when something hard knocked the wind from me. "No, Danka! No whores!" A necklace pair of a man herded us back with a pike. He was no monk, rather some local vigilante. I put down the girl and attempted to step around him. In return, he mirrored my movements. We continued our crab-like dance while people bayed at us like dogs. "Danka whore! Danka whore!" The clam girl kicked the fat man's legs. "Get in the temple," I ordered. Instead, she dug her fingernails into his flesh. The taunts grew louder. "Danka whore! Water chicken whore!" The fat man posed to skewer the girl with his pike. I grabbed the pole, attempting to twist him off balance, but he had the size and temperament of an enraged buffalo. "Danka whore! Filthy!" The temple gate was closing. Just 3 or 4 steps to the left and I could slip inside. I would be safe. I would be free. But what about the girl? By the time I pried her from his leg, the gate would have shut, leaving both of us at the mercy of the bundes and the approaching pirates. It wasn't my fault that the girl had made such a stupid move. Yet she had done it to save me. Screams pierced my ears, shooting strength into my bones. I ducked under the swinging pike, peeled the girl from his leg, and threw her through the narrowing gap between gate and wall. I lunged for safety, but too late. The gate slammed shut behind the girl, catching my sleeve in its great wooden jaws. I hammered and kicked, barely hearing my own voice. "Open up! I'll pay you!" My answer was the thump of the bolt sliding into its socket. I was a pinned target for whatever punishment the fat bunde wanted to wreak. I turned my head to face my tormentor, but he was lost in the fleeing crowd. At the far end of the lane, in the last evening light, pirates poured into the village. I struggled to free my sleeve, but the silk was stubborn. With one foot against the gate, I finally yanked my sleeve free, tearing a gash in the material. The first black turban appeared just steps away. An old man swung his walking cane at the pirate. A swish of a blade, then the cane and the fist holding it disappeared in a spray of blood. A woman was dragged past by the hair. Which way to flee? The lane was a simmering mass of bodies colliding on all sides, offering no sense of direction. Spying a boy squeezing into a narrow gap between houses, I took my chances and bolted through the crowd. The alley was coal-black and smelled like the cesspit of hell, but it might make a passable hideout until the raid was over. I slipped on something greasy, breaking my fall on what felt like a mound of garbage, as torchlight bloomed on the walls. I crouched into a low curl, narrowed my eyes, and tried not to breathe. A scraggly bearded figure raised his torch and peered into the passageway, baring his teeth as though he'd spotted me. I considered my defense. Fingernails in the eyes, or a sharp blow with my money purse. A balled-up wad of rubbish in the face was likely best. A second pirate clapped the bearded one's shoulder. In a blink, they were gone. I stumbled out the other end of the passage into a smoke-filled lane drenched in red glow. 2 female figures ran from a burning house pursued by bandits. A paper window steps away burst into flame. Somewhere inside, a woman pleaded. It all became clear. The pirates were uninterested in men. Half the girls on the flower boats had been taken in village raids and sold into whoredom. I was never going back there. Death first. Voices filled the alley behind me. There was no chance of retreat. I hugged the walls, creeping through shadows away from the fires. I nearly fell through an open doorway into a dark room, deserted except for a lingering odor of cooked chicken. A rear exit led to a private courtyard. I tried a door on the other side but found it firmly bolted. "I'm a villager! Let me in!" My pounding was answered by a lone dog's hysterical bark. A dilapidated stone border wall functioned as a crude stairway to within reach of the roof. A misty light rain slickened the tiles. After hooking my fingers through a broken gap, I managed to hoist myself, crawl over the peak, and lay flat. The tiles thumped against my chest. No, it was my heartbeat. Slow down, heart. You're safe here. From here I could see the entire market street and the hellish opera unfolding below. Pirates hurried from shops with sacks over their heads. Others herded women through the muddy lane. Dogs, alarmed by popping flames, ran every which way. My hands gripped the tiles so hard that one came loose. I was afraid. Not about the fires or the people I recognized down there. Even as a child, this village felt foreign to me. The taunts I'd endured. "Dirty Danka! Motherless one! Drunkard's daughter! Leave your fish! No, I won't pay more." Those had changed to Danga whore. But the meaning was the same. Forever contemptible. Forever the outsider. Watching the place burn moved nothing in my heart. The fear in me was for myself. A woman screamed somewhere below. I knew I shouldn't, but I crept toward the roof's edge to peek. A heavy-set man pinned a teenage girl to the mud while 2 other bandits tugged at her trousers. I felt more disgust toward the men than pity for the girl. She was Punte, who in normal circumstances would fling a cutting look my way. Regardless, I had no power to change things. The roof tiles snapped free in my hand. How tempting to slide it to the edge in just the right spot and watch it drop straight onto a bandit's skull. If I pulled my head back in time, if the stocky one shifted just a bit closer. A fist folded around my ankle and nearly twisted it off. "Get off!" said a hog-gravelly voice. "You'll bring them here." I tried to jerk away, but he wrenched my foot until I thought it would break. Tiny, piggish eyes peered through the weak light. Did he mean to push or pull? "Let me inside, then," I whispered. "If it isn't the Danka whore." He sounded like I'd interrupted some hard drinking. He twisted harder. "Let me in. I'll do you free." "Not your choice. You do me anyway." He tugged my leg, nearly losing his grip. I slipped down the rain-slick roof. "Let go, so I can climb up," I said. "Lying slut. Try to cheat me." He leaned over the crest, his other arm reaching for my free leg. Then a surprised, swinish grunt. A mound of dark flesh skidded downward, one arm flailing, the other firmly attached to my ankle. I grasped for a nail, a crack, a hole to cling, to break my slide. to pull myself out of the way. I realized too late. I still held the broken tile. His full mass barreled over me into the dark, dragging my foot with him. Let go! Then I had nothing left to cling to. My legs kicked free, striking air. Flames, blurred and spinning. I knew I was falling. I knew it would never stop. If I stretched out both arms, could I fly away like a bird? My head struck something neither hard nor soft. Life drained into darkness and silence. So, this was death. Death was black. Death was numb. Something poked my back. Laughter dribbled into my ears. My cheeks burned. Vision returned, my eyes filled with fire, which focused into a single flame. It was only a torch held to my face.
"A goddess fallen from heaven!"
Someone yanked me up by the armpits. Another pirate leaned close and leered. Men surrounded me, all clad in black, except for a boy who stood out in his violet turban. He picked up something from the ground and waved it in front of me. My ivory comb! I tried to grab it, but my arms were held fast from behind. The boy laughed and stuck the comb in a fold of his turban.
"Lucky you landed on him, not him on you," a pirate said.
I didn't understand until whoever held my arms turned me to look. My rooftop assailant lay twisted on the ground, a broken roof tile lodged firmly behind his ear.
"Lucky us,"
the tree-trunk-shaped pirate said. He nodded to another, who bound my wrists behind my back and nudged me forward. The village burned around me, undeterred by the rain. Death was fire. My captor pressed me toward a line of shuffling women. No, not a slave again. Give me real death instead. I kicked backward, wishing for a groin, but met only air, answered with a knee in my spine and stinging slaps across my face. Every shred of strength ebbed out of me like icy rivers. Death was ice. Death was stones and debris stabbing my feet. Death was fists and pikes prodding me forward behind marching bodies. It was throbbing shoulders, dripping matted hair in my face that I couldn't flip away. It was sprawled figures illuminated by an oily golden glow, some moving, others stiff as logs. It was the hiss of snakes, or laughing ghosts, or raindrops striking hot embers. Death mocked me as I passed the last houses, where, overhead, the magpies, fooled by fires into a second sunset, squawked merrily in the trees. 2. Red Slippers. The storm snuffed out the moon and stars. Screams pierced the darkness at every heave and buck of the ship. There must have been 50 women and girls crammed onto the poop deck, exposed to wind and the heavy rain. Judging by the violent arch of each sway, I guessed that they'd anchored us outside the shoal past the northern headland in waters too rough and too far from shore to swim. Some women huddled together, sobbing, while others like me hunched against the parapet for what little shelter it offered. I braced myself for another big swell, though there was nothing I could do but dig my fingernails into gaps in the deck boards. A wave smashed the transom, spewing frigid spray over the rail and pitching the ship crosswise to a chorus of shrieks and whining wind. Brine on my cheeks tasted like tears. No place, no person would miss me. No family to pry ransom from. I was as worthless as trash fish, as good as dead. At best, fodder for another brothel. I had to get away. even if I risked drowning. Faraway lightning provided a glimpse of shore, too brief to see.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?